Hey, welcome back to Graphically Hip. My name is Sarah. I'm going to teach you kind of a beginner's how to get around Adobe Illustrator in case you are brand new to Illustrator. So this is your home screen when you first open Illustrator. You have the option to kind of create a new document here. This will have some Illustrator tutorials for you. Down here, you will see a list of your most recent jobs or your most recent projects that you've worked on. Up here, you have your menu of what you can do next. So I always just start with new file. And then again, you have some templates here that you can work with. The last file that you used or that you created its settings will remain here. Across the top, you have saved templates. So if you have a template that you work a lot with, you can save it as, like, for example, if you make business cards all the time, you can save a template that's 3.5 by 2 inches. And I can show you how to do that in a couple minutes here. And then we have just some different types of templates you can use right in Illustrator for mobile, web, print, film and video, art and illustration. So just for fun, I'm just going to go over recent, choose a 12 by 18 file. In here, you can select if you want that 12 by 18 to be inches, pixels, points, picas, feet, etc. I always work in inches, even though I'm Canadian. It's a funny thing here. We are taught the metric system in school, and then pretty much as soon as we leave school, we revert to inches and feet, unless you're in a specific industry, such as like carpentry or welding, and the kind of trades they use metric. But for the most part, everybody else uses inches and feet. Silly system, I know. Here, you can switch the orientation of your artboard, which is what I am going to do in this case. Because the Roland BN20 has a 20-inch capacity, but really, once you add the rollers in, you kind of go down to about 18. You can get a little bit more out of it, but I always just start with an 18 by 12-inch artboard. Up here, you can name it if you want to, or you can name it when you go to save your file. It doesn't matter. It all does the same thing. I don't usually name it right here because it seems like an unnecessary step. It seems like a bit of a time waster, but just for fun, I'm going to name it new tutorial, just for fun. Here you can select how many artboards you want to use. For example, if you were designing a business card that had 2 sides, then you would want 2 artboards, one for each side. In this case, I just want 1 artboard. You can add bleed, which I'll show you kind of what this does. To me, I don't often use this feature, even though I'm a print designer. I just kind of trick my way into it in my PDF settings, and I will show you that as well. This chain button is an unlink button. So you can see when I change my top bleed, it changes all 4. Anytime you see this unlink button within Illustrator, it will stop it from doing that. So now I can freely select how much bleed I want on the top only, or the right only, or whatever. In the case of bleed, you would really only need this if you were making something like a booklet where you didn't need bleed on the middle of the page, but you needed bleed on all 3 sides of the page. But even then, I wouldn't use it here. I would use it in my PDF settings. For us Roland BN20 users, we always want to be in CMYK color. For anyone who's new to color spaces, CMYK is what we use for print. RGB is what we use for screen or web. So RGB stands for red, green, blue, and that is the color space that is used online or on any kind of a screen, your phone screen, your iPad, anything. It's all RGB. The color space that is used in print is cyan, magenta, yellow, and K stands for key, which also means black. It's an old term. So, always leave your color space in CMYK color if you're going to be printing. If you select RGB and you export it as RGB, a couple things are going to happen. When you get your file into Roland, it will not understand the cut line because the cut line has not been created in CMYK. It has been created in RGB. Also, the colors will print differently than they would if you were printing in CMYK. In some cases, that's actually a bonus, and you'll get much more vibrant colors. But because your printer uses 4 cartridges, or 5 in some cases, you have the cyan cartridge, the magenta, the yellow, and the black cartridge. If you tell it to print the red, green, blue color space, it's going to be like, I don't know what this means. I'm just going to put whatever colors I think closest match. And sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's not. But again, your cut line won't be useful if you do that. In Raster Effects, I just always leave this at 300. I think 300 is a really good number for output to your printer. If you were creating, let's say, a proof for somebody, you could choose a lower, like a screen would make it a much lower resolution for viewing on screen. I rarely use that because when I send a proof to somebody, I want them to be able to see the detail, but also not take my work and give it to somebody else to duplicate. So I always just use medium. 36 is very rare. That would be like for if you were creating a thumbnail that you needed to be at the very top of a browser, for example, like to the left of the website in your search bar, you could use 36 because that's so tiny that it doesn't need to be any sort of resolution. And then there's some more settings here that you can get into if you wanted to play around. Actually, most of these are the same settings we just looked at, but now I'm going to say create document. Now, the red line you see around your artboard is the bleed that we created in the previous screen. So you see how my right and my top have more bleed and my left and my bottom have less bleed. Again, to me, this doesn't matter, but that was just so you can see how the bleed is set up. This white square is your artboard. You cannot select it freely. You can, using the artboard tool, select it and move it around. You can copy it and paste it and all kinds of things. You can adjust its size using the nodes, etc. You cannot remove an artboard though. There has to be an artboard in order for Illustrator to understand what it's saving, especially when you're exporting. So there's your artboard that we selected at 18 inches by 12 inches. So if you think about this artboard, just like the media that you're putting into your BN20, this is an 18-inch piece, even though your piece of vinyl or paper or whatever you're putting into your printer is 20 inches. 18 is generally what you can print. So think of this as your media. Don't go outside of it. Design within it. All the things. On the left of Illustrator, you have a tool menu, which is expandable using these 3 dots. You might see this differently on your screen because I have this set the way I want it custom. Across the top, you see kind of an attributes menu, which shows you, different things that are going on with what's on your artboard or what's on your creation screen. And then across the top, of course, we have our file, edit, object type, select, effect, view, window, and help, which are tools that you will use often. And on the right, we have another tool menu, which is kind of a different set of tools than these ones, but a lot of people like to move these around and use them freely. So the way to do that is to grab it in this dark gray area, and then you can just move it. You can put it wherever you want. And let's say you don't want the stroke menu here, you can grab that and drag it around and put it down there. And then you can grab sections. So these little tiny little lines here are sections of tools that I've created the way I want them. So I have both my type tools here in one section, so I can just grab that section out and use it on its own while I leave this one. By the way, those arrows expand and contract your tools, and I can leave that back over here if I want to do all the different things with it. The other thing you can do with these is you can add them to kind of this tool menu if you wanted to. And for some reason mine isn't clicking in there, but usually you'll see, oh, there it is. See that blue highlight? Now that tool is added to this tool. And what you're looking for is that blue highlight. And sometimes you can't really grab this top thing unless you can. It's probably because I have this dragged over too far. Okay, well, whatever. It's not going to do it right now, but you get the point. Under File, I just want to point out this document setup. So in here, you can go in and adjust your bleed again if you didn't like it how you had it in the first one. I'm going to say I don't want any bleed and I want this to be the same. I'm going to enter a 0. You can edit your artboards, do all kinds of different things in that document setup. So that kind of prevents you from having to go back to the beginning where we were in the previous screen. Under Edit, we just have all kinds of like paste options, and you can correct your spelling in here. You can edit your colors quickly. This will edit the whole document, not just like one color at a time. Object will, I use this tool a ton, this object tool. And once we have stuff on here, all of these will light up. Well, not all of them, but most of them. But because I haven't drawn anything or done anything, we just have these kind of tools highlighted. Then we have the type menu, lots of different options in there. The select menu is super handy if you want to select all of something. Let's say you want to select all of the pink objects on your artboard. You could go select, same, fill color, and then choose. In the next menu, it'll give you the option to choose like pink or whatever color. Then once you click off of it, all of the pink objects will be selected and you can change their color to something else. Under Effects, we actually have, there's Illustrator Effects, which is really cool. You can get into like some 3D stuff. I use Stylize a lot for drop shadows and outer glows and stuff. And then you have Photoshop Effects, which is a really cool tool. If you don't also have a subscription to Photoshop, you can use some kind of different Photoshop effects right within Illustrator. It's super, super cool. Under View, this is just different settings that you can choose to view your actual document, and also to use your guidelines and your snap to options and all of that fun stuff. Window is a super helpful tool for anybody who wants to customize what they're seeing when they open Illustrator. So under Workspace, you have, this is a list of automatic workspaces that you can select. So let's just say, for example, I'm choosing automation as my workspace. These are the tools that they think that you want to see if you choose the automation. Let's say we want essentials. totally different set of tools that you see. These ones will, the tools on the left are almost always the same, but the ones on the right and the top change. So I have previously set my workspace the way I like it, which you can also do. All of these items here are the items that you will see over here. So if you want to see gradients in your workspace, just select it from the window and add it to your menu. Then you go into Workspace, say New Workspace, name it whatever you want to name it, and say OK. In this case, I am using my custom workspace, which I love, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Now, let's just draw something here. I'm going to show you how to export something using bleed, because I don't like using the bleed option from the previous menu, so I promised you I would show you how to do that. There we go. I'm going to put that back there where it belongs. So your standard bleed is 0.25 inches. Best way to figure that out is to grab your square tool right here. What I did there was I just clicked anywhere in the blank space and this box popped up. It says rectangle 0.25, 0.25, okay. Now I have a 0.25 inch square. Just for fun, I'm going to change its color to black. And I'm going to just drag that along to the edge of my artboard. You can see when I zoom in how off I was. So that is how much bleed I need for any document. So now I know I can just drag this to be about 2.25 inches on either side all the way around. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to change this red square to 18 by 12, which we can do right here, 18 by 12. And because I have that unlock button selected, it will freely let me do that the way I want it. But had that been selected and I put 18, it would then, oh, sorry, if I put 20, it would then grow that with the 20, like however wide you however more wide you make it, it'll also make it that much more tall. So I'm going to go back to 18. I'm going to use my align tools to align this to my artboard, which is right here. Align to artboard. Now I'm going to go to object, down to path, and offset path. And I have 0.25 inches selected already, so I'm going to say OK. And as you can see, that is exactly the width of my little black square, so we know already that that's perfect. Now when I go to save this file, because I want to print this, by the way, that's file save as or file save. I'm going to say new tutorial because that's what I already named it, or I could enter it here. I'm going to choose PDF and I'm going to go save. Now, you don't really need to mess around with these, but you can if you want to. Where you find the marks and bleeds is in here. So go to marks and bleeds. Do not add any marks up here ever for use on the Roland BN20. On occasion, you may need a trim mark, which in this case, I'm just going to show you so you can see what it looks like, and I'll tell you what application that's good for in a sec. And then you go down to bleeds. So now here's our link item again. And because I want all four of these to stay the same, I'm just going to leave it linked. I'm going to say 0.25 of an inch. Now it's going to automatically add 0.25 of an inch to anything that is outside of my artboard, which is represented by that black line right there. So I'm going to say Save PDF. Now, when I click on it, sometimes my PDFs are really slow. There it is. So you can see it added in the trim lines. Stop it. It added here's my original artboard, which you see the black line because I had a red square with a black outline selected. If I just had a red square, you wouldn't see that black line. It doesn't print or save the black outline of the artboard. So where I would use this is if I was printing a decal that needed to go onto a sign. I don't need to add a roll and cut line because I can just print this as is, place it on a 12 by 18 piece of metal or wood or whatever you're using, and then the bleed would already be there. And you can use these crop marks to help you line it up to the piece of metal or wood or whatever your substrate is. So just so you can see what this would look like without that black outline, I'm just going to save it again, which I just did using Command S. And by the way, to make it super easy to see, I'm going to color this blue. When you look at your file name up here, when there's a little star beside the file extension, which in this case is PDF, but it will start out as AI, which is for Adobe Illustrator. The star means that it's unsaved. So if I hit Command S to save it, or on a PC, hit Control S, that will overwrite the previous file that I have saved with whatever I've done now. So that star goes away once it's saved. So now when I click on my object, you will just see the blue square without the black outline and the red bleed, which in this case, the red bleed is completely useless because I'm going to cut it all off anyways, according to my trim marks. So that's kind of a beginner's view of Illustrator and also how to save a PDF with bleed. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button and tell your friends because we're trying to grow this YouTube channel and we would love your support. Thanks.